Hey guys, tonight we slip into the gritty, grimy world of Queen Victoria's England, where the air hums with coal dust and the streets reek of horse dung and unwashed dreams. Picture yourself trudging through London's fog, your boots squelching in who knows what, as horse-drawn carriages rattle past, splashing your hem with muck. You're heading to Kensington Palace, where a teenage Victoria is about to wake up, blissfully unaware of the hygiene horrors that define her era. You probably won't expect what I'm about to tell you next. Royalty didn't exactly mean cleanliness. So before you listen to my story, give me a like and subscribe so I know you're still listening with me. You blink awake in Victoria's childhood bedroom, the air heavy with the musty scent of old velvet curtains. It's 1830 and hygiene as you know it is a distant fantasy. Bathing, a rare event even for a princess. Water suspect people think it carries disease, not cleanliness. Instead, you dab your face with a cloth dipped in rose water, hoping it masks the sweat from last night's sleep. The mainstream fact is stark. In early 19th century Britain, most homes, even royal ones, lacked indoor plumbing, showers non-existent, tubs a luxury hauled out maybe once a month, if you're lucky. You're surrounded by chamber pots, emptied by maids who grimace as much as you do. But here's the quirky bit. Some folks believe night capsize. Those frilly hats kept your head clean by trapping sweat and oils. Imagine Victoria, her curls stuffed under one, thinking she's hygienic. Scholars still debate whether this distrust of water stemmed more from medical fears or sheer inconvenience. You feel the itch of unwashed skin as you pull on stockings. Already dreading the layers of heavy gowns waiting, the palace smells of wax, soot, and bodice. Nobody's fresh here. A servant offers you a basin, but the water's murky, reused from yesterday. You splash sparingly, wincing at the chill. Joke time. Why did Victorians skip baths? They thought water was just tea without the leaves. You chuckle. But the reality sinks in. Even Victoria, destined to rule an empire, starts her day barely cleaner than the scullery maid. You notice her bed linens, changed maybe weekly, stiff with sweat stains. The room stuffy, windows shut tight against miasmas, bad air blamed for illness. You're starting to understand why everyone's so fond of perfume. It's not luxury, it's survival. As you step into the corridor, you hear the rustle of skirts and the clink of breakfast trays. Victoria's waking to her own morning routine just as sparse. You're both trapped in an era where cleanliness is a gamble, not a given. The day unfolds, and you're swept into the rhythm of Kensington. You pass servants hauling coal, their faces smudged, and you realize nobody's questioning this. Hygiene's a low priority when survival's the game. You catch a whiff of Victoria's governess, her breath sour from last night's wine, and you wonder how a princess tolerates it. The answer, she doesn't know better. This is normal. You spot a silver ewer, a status symbol. But it's mostly for show waters, too precious to waste on washing. You're starting to feel grimy just imagining it, aren't you? Another quick joke. Victorian hygiene was so bad, even the rats bathed more often. As you trail Victoria through her lessons, you notice her hands unwashed since yesterday, smudging her quill. Nobody bats an eye. The quirky tidbit resurfaces. Some doctors claim too much washing weakened the body's natural oils. You shudder, thinking of your own soap-stocked bathroom back home. The debate lingers. Did Victorians avoid baths from superstition or just a lack of pipes? Either way, you're stuck in this sticky, smelly reality. You follow Victoria to the dining room, where the table gleams, but the air doesn't. Tomorrow, she'll be queen and you'll see how little that changes. For now, you're just trying not to scratch. The morning light filters through the heavy drapes as you linger in the dining room, the scent of porridge and weak tea doing little to cut through the lingering staleness in the air. But wait, a day's different. Whispers ripple through the halls like a chill draft. King William is dead. You feel the shift, the palace buzzing with urgency, and suddenly you're rushing alongside Victoria as she's summoned. At just 18, she's thrust into queenship, and you, invisible shadow, Tag along to witness how this ascension amplifies the era's hygienic shortcomings rather than erasing them. The crown might sparkle, but the routines beneath it, still shrouded in secrets that rely on sense to hide the truth. You watch as Victoria's day begins in earnest, her sparse morning ritual unfolding in a chamber now charged with royal weight. A maid brings a fresh basin cold water, of course, since hot requires laborious heating over fires. You dip your imaginary cloth alongside hers, wiping face, neck, and underarms in quick, efficient strokes. No full immersion here. That's for special occasions. The mainstream historical fact hits you. Upon her ascension in 1837, Buckingham Palace, her new home boasted only rudimentary plumbing, with no running hot water foyers. Baths were labor-intensive affairs, often skipped in favor of these kettlicks, as folks cheekily called them back then. You feel the chill of the water on your skin, a brisk reminder that even a queen starts her reign far from pampered in the modern sense. But oh, the scented secrets stir the real mask. You catch Victoria reaching for her favorite vial of eau de cologne, dabbing it liberally on her wrists and neck. It's not just for elegance, it's warfare against the odors that build up from infrequent washing. Perfumes like lavender or rosewater become your armor, layering over the natural musk that no amount of quick wipes can banish. Here's the quirky tidbit: some royals, including whispers about Victoria, used scented handkerchiefs tucked into sleeves or bodices to waft freshness during audiences. A sneaky hack in an era before antiperspirants. Imagine that your queen poised on the throne, subtly sniffing her own hanky mid-conversation. Scholars debate whether this reliance on fragrances stemmed more from cultural norms or genuine fear of waterborne ills, but either way, you're inhaling a floral fog that barely conceals the underlying earthiness. As you follow her into the throne room for that first council meeting, the air thickens with the mingled perfumes of courtiers, each masking their own unwashed realities. You stand there feeling the itch of your own imagined grime, wondering how anyone focuses on affairs of state when everyone's secretly battling body odor. Joke incoming: why did Victorian queens love perfume so much? Because it was the only way to rule without getting overthrown by their own scents. You smirk softly, the sarcasm easing the discomfort. The palace life amplifies it all. Grand halls echo with footsteps, but the close quarters mean odors linger like unwelcome guests. Victoria composes herself, her young face set in determination, but you notice the subtle adjustments. A fan waved not just for coolness, but to stir the air. Time drifts as the day wears on, and you're back in her private quarters for a moment's respite. The morning ritual repeats in miniature: a quick freshen up before lunch, perhaps a change of linen undergarments to absorb the day's sweat. No modern shower to rinse away the coronation jitters. Instead, you rely on powders dusted under arms or on feet, talc-like substances that clump and cake. It's a far cry from your own steamy bathroom routines, isn't it? Another light joke: ascending the throne sounds glamorous, but it's more like climbing into a perfumed prison of politeness. You feel the weight of those heavy skirts, trapping heat and moisture, turning every movement into a subtle sweat session. The odors of palace life creep in everywhere: kitchen smells of roasting meats mixing with the sooty tang from coal fires, all underscoring the human element no one discusses. You overhear maids gossiping about the queen's preferences. She favors simple scents, nothing overpowering, but enough to maintain that royal aura. As evening approaches, you realize this ascension hasn't revolutionized hygiene, it's just elevated the art of concealment. Victoria retires early, exhausted, and you linger, pondering how these sparse rituals sustain an empire's figurehead. The quirky fringe returns in tales of aromatic pomander fruits studded with cloveshing in rooms to purify the air, a holdover from plague fears that Victoria's court still clings to. Scholars openly debate if her personal habits improved post-ascension due to Albert's influence later on, or if they remained rooted in childhood sparsity. For now, in these early days, you're immersed in the scented veil, the gentle sarcasm of history whispering that power doesn't always smell sweet. You drift through the corridors, the candlelight flickering on polished surfaces that hide so much beneath. Another joke to lighten the load: if Victoria's hygiene was a secret, it was one that didn't stay buried. Thank goodness for modern plumbing, right? The palace settles into night, but the odors, they linger like ghosts, reminding you that queenship starts with the same gritty realities as any other life. You're trailing Victoria through Buckingham Palace's gilded corridors, the air thick with the scent of beeswax polish and something less regal, humanity itself, unwashed and unavoidable. It's a quiet morning, a rare pause in her young reign, and you're about to witness one of the year's most shocking truths. Bathing, even for a queen, is a sporadic luxury, not a daily necessity. You step into her private apartments, where a maid is preparing a bath, an event as ceremonious as a state dinner. The tub, a hulking copper beast, sits in the corner, steam rising reluctantly from water hauled bucket by bucket. You brace yourself, knowing this is no daily dip but a ritual reserved for special occasions. The mainstream fact hits like a cold splash. In the 1830s and 1840s, even royal households bathed infrequently, often once a month or less, due to the sheer logistics of heating and transporting water. You watch the maids labor, their arms straining under sloshing pails, and you feel the weight of their effort. Victoria, in her dressing gown, looks almost apprehensive as she approaches the tub. You can't blame her if water's lukewarm at best, and the soap, a harsh lye-based lump, stings more than it cleans. You imagine dipping a toe, the chill biting, and you wonder how anyone endures this. No wonder they skip it. You're half tempted to skip it yourself, just standing there. But here's the quirky tidbit that makes you raise an eyebrow. Some Victorians, possibly including Victoria, believed too much bathing stripped the body's natural defenses, leaving you vulnerable to chills or worse. Doctors of the time, with their half-baked theories, often endorsed this, claiming water weakened the skin's protective oils. You picture Victoria, shivering post-bath, wrapped in flannel, convinced she's risking her health for this rare cleanse. Scholars still debate whether this aversion was rooted in medical advice or just the inconvenience of it all. Hauling water up palace stairs isn't exactly queenly fun. You feel the damp air, the tub's metallic tang mixing with the faint floral of her rosewater rinse, and you're struck by how alien this feels compared to your daily shower. You linger as she bathes, the process slow and deliberate. No quick scrub here, it's a production. A maid pours another pitcher, trying to keep the water warm. But it's a losing battle. You notice the soap leaves a gritty residue, nothing like the foamy gels you're used to. Victoria's hair stays dry. Washing it is another ordeal entirely, saved for another day. You're itching just thinking about it, aren't you? Joke time. Why did Victorian baths feel like a royal pain? Because they literally took a village to fill the tub. You chuckle softly, the sarcasm a gentle buffer against the reality of this sparse routine. Post-bath, Victoria emerges, pink-cheeked but hardly glowing. The maids pat her dry with coarse linens, and you realize this is as clean as she'll get for weeks. You follow her to the dressing table, where she dabs on more eau de cologne, that floral shield against the world. The room smells of wet wood and soap, but it's fleeting tomorrow. The cycle of sweat and dust begins anew. You glance at the tub already being drained, and feel a pang for modern plumbing. The servants hustle, emptying the water into slop buckets, their own hygiene even less attended to. It's a hierarchy of grime, and even the queen's at its mercy. As the day unfolds, you wander the palace, noticing how everyone's adapted to this low-bathing life. Courtiers fan themselves, not just for elegance but to stir the stagnant air. You catch whiffs of lavender, musk, even clove-spiked commanders hanging like ornaments, all battling the inevitable. Another light joke: Victorian baths were so rare, they celebrated them with a holiday in some month. You smirk, but the truth lingers. Cleanliness is a privilege, not a given, even for royalty. You pass a window, the London smog creeping in, and realize the outside world's no cleaner. The Thames, a virtual sewer, supplies much of the city's water, and you shudder at the thought of bathing in that. The quirky belief in minimal bathing circles back as you overhear a lady-in-waiting advise against excessive washing to avoid catching cold. It's a reminder of how deeply these ideas were ingrained, even in a palace. You watched Victoria prepare for a public appearance, her maids layering on fresh linens to absorb the day's sweat, a stopgap until the next bath. The debate persisted. Fear of illness outweigh the desire for cleanliness, or was it simply a matter of access? Either way, you're stuck in this sticky reality, the air heavy with the scent of bodies barely cleansed. As evening falls, you linger in the palace's quieter corners, the candlelight casting long shadows. Victoria retires, her brief bath already a distant memory. You feel the weight of unwashed days piling up, the grime settling into your imaginary skin. One last joke to ease you. If Victoria's bath was a royal decree, it'd be the least followed law in England. You smile, but the truth is sobering cleanliness, as you know it, is a modern miracle. The palace hums with life, but beneath the grandeur, it's a world of sparse washes and scented cover-ups. A queen as bound by her era's limits as anyone else. The palace's evening hush envelops you like a heavy blanket, but as dawn creeps in again, you're drawn back to Victoria's chambers, where the real battle against grime begins not with water, but with wardrobe. You stand by as maids bustle in with armfuls of fabrics, the air still carrying that faint, soapy ghost from yesterday's rare bath. Now, it's time to dress, layering on the garments that define a queen's silhouette but trap horrors you can't even imagine. Heavy wool, silk, and cotton pile on each piece, a barrier against the world, yet a breeding ground for sweat and stains that no quick wipe can conquer. You feel the weight settling on your shoulders, the fabrics whispering secrets of accumulation as the day heats up. You start with the basics, chemise and drawers, thin linen shifts meant to absorb the body's offerings before they reach the outer layers. But here's the mainstream fact: Victorian undergarments were changed infrequently, often worn for days on end, turning them into soggy sponges of perspiration and natural oils. You slip into them, the fabric clinging slightly from yesterday's wear, and you wince at the clamminess. No modern laundry cycles here. Washing these takes time and servants, so they're aired out overnight if you're lucky. The corset comes next, boned with whalebone or steel, cinching your waist to that impossible hourglass. You gasp as it's laced, the pressure building, knowing it'll trap heat like a greenhouse, sweat pooling in the crevices by midday. Layer upon layer builds, petticoats, crinolines for that bell-shaped skirt, then the gown itself, heavy with embroidery and dyes that bleed when damp. You move gingerly, the fabrics rustling like dry leaves, but beneath, it's a different story: stains from spills, sweat marks yellowing the armpits, even faint odors rising as your body warms. Modern aside, thank goodness for breathable synthetics today. You'd trade a kingdom for some moisture-wicking tech right now. The quirky tidbit sneaks in with the vinegar cloth. Some ladies, perhaps Victoria herself in private, used vinegar-dampened rags to spot clean underarms midday. A tangy hack to neutralize smells without undressing. Imagine that sour whiff mixing with your perfume. It's quirky all right, and a bit fringe for royal etiquette. Scholars debate whether these layered horrors were more a product of fashion's tyranny or hygiene's neglect, with some arguing the sheer volume of clothing made cleanliness impossible, while others point to social pressures keeping women bundled up regardless. You feel it all accumulating as you step into the mirror, the reflection poised and pristine on the surface, but you know the truth be evening. Those hidden layers will be a map of the day's exertions. Joke 1. Why did Victorian dresses weigh so much? Because they carried the Queen's secrets and her sweat equity. You let out a soft chuckle, the sarcasm a gentle nudge in the sleepy tale. As the morning progresses, you're out in the palace gardens with Victoria, the sun filtering through leaves, but the heat billows under your finery. Sweat trickles down your back, soaking into the chemise, the corset acting like a barrier that holds it all in. You fan yourself lazily, the motion more for circulation than elegance, wishing for a breeze to lift the heaviness. The stains start small, a tea drop on the cuff, a smudge from handling documents, but they linger, hard to remove without stripping down, which is a production in itself. You catch Victoria adjusting her sleeves discreetly, perhaps hiding a similar mark, and you realize even queens aren't immune to these petty plagues. The day wears on, and you're in a carriage rumbling through London, the jolts making everything shift uncomfortably. The fabrics chafe now, irritated by the salt of dried sweat, and you long for a simple T-shirt. Another modern aside, our quick-dry athleisure would blow their minds freedom from this fabric prison. But back then, it's all about entrance. You notice the maids later, when undressing begins in reverse, peeling off layers like an onion, each revealing the horrors beneath damp spots, faint rings of dirt from hems dragging on floors. The quirky vinegar trick comes to mind again. Maybe a maid gabs at a stain with it, the sharp scent cutting through the room like a wake-up call. Joke 2. Layered garments were the original multitasker. She dressed you, oppressed you, and collected souvenirs from every meal. You smile faintly, the ASMR cadence slowing your thoughts as the narrative drifts. The accumulation feels relentless. By week's end, those underlayers are stiff, carrying the ghosts of past days. You ponder the debate annual fashion versus function, with experts split on whether Victoria's later morning blacks hid stains better or just amplified the gloom. Either way, you're trapped in this tactile nightmare, the finery of facade over festering filth. Evening descends, and you're back in the chambers, the undressing ritual a relief tinged with revelation. The gown pools at your feet, petticoats following, and there they are, the hidden horrors, sweat-streaked and stained, ready for airing or a rare wash. You feel the cool air on your skin at last, but its fleeting. Tomorrow brings the same. One more joke to lighten the load. If Victorian clothes could talk, they'd spill more tea than the Queen's afternoon service. You exhale slowly, the sarcasm fading into calm as the palace quiets. The weight of those garments lingers in your mind, a reminder that royal splendor comes at a sticky, stained cost, blending seamlessly into the next unspoken challenges of the era. The palace's quiet corridors fade into a softer glow as morning light spills across your path, drawing you toward Victoria's private vanity, where the day's more intimate battles unfold. You're here now, facing the mirror alongside her, the silver-backed glass reflecting a world where smiles hide secrets sharper than any crown jewel. Oral care in this era, it's a dilemma wrapped in decay, with primitive tools that barely scratch the surface of the neglect building behind closed lips. You pick up a frayed twiggies, a literal stick, chewed at one end to form bristles, and dip it into a tin of soot mixed with salt, the gritty paste that's supposed to keep your teeth from turning traitor. The taste hits you like regret, chalky and abrasive, as you scrub tentatively, feeling the uneven drag against enamel already plotting its revenge. You start the routine, mirroring Victoria's motions, the air in the room laced with the faint, metallic tang of yesterday's meals lingering on your breath. Brushing isn't the polished ritual you're used to. It's a hasty affair, done maybe once a day if remembered amid the whirl of royal duties. The mainstream historical fact sinks in like a dull ache. In the Victorian period, tooth decay was rampant even among the elite, with diets heavy in sugars from imported teas, and confections eroding enamel faster than any primitive paste could combat. You feel the grains scraping, not quite reaching the crevices where trouble brews, and you wince at the thought of abscesses forming in silence, hidden pains that queens endure without complaint. No floor mid here, no electric buzz, just this humble twig or, if fancy, a horsehair brush that sheds more than it cleans. But wait, the quirky tidbit that'll make you grimace. Some folks, including rumors of royal circles, rinsed with urine their own, boiled down for its ammonia content a whitened teeth. A fringe practice harking back to ancient Romans, but whispered in Victorian shadows. Imagine Victoria, poised and proper, perhaps experimenting in secret, the sharp, acrid scent masked by mint leaves chewed afterward. You swirl the paste in your mouth, spitting into a porcelain basin, the water turning murky gray, and you wonder how anyone smiled through state portraits with such methods. Scholars openly debate whether dental neglect stemmed more from ignorance of bacteria or the sheer unavailability of better tools, with germ theory still decades away from reshaping habits. As you rinse with tepid water flavored with close nature's breath freshener, you catch your reflection, lips pursed against the discomfort. The neglect builds subtly, a twinge here, a sensitivity there, leading to those hidden royal pains that history glosses over. Modern aside, our meaty gels and sonic brushes would seem like magic wands to them, banishing plaque with a hum instead of this laborious grind. You set the twig down, feeling the residue linger, and step back as Victoria does the same, her young face unmarred yet by the toll time and sweets will take. Joke incoming: why did Victorians fear the dentist more than taxes? Because their brushes were basically firewood, and their teeth paid the price. You let a soft laugh escape, the sarcasm whispering through the narrative like a bedtime breeze. The day presses on, and you're at breakfast with her, the clink of silver on china masking any discomfort, as she sips tea laced with sugar enemy number one for those pearly whites. You bite into a biscuit, feeling the crunch echo in your jaw, aware that without proper care, such indulgences spell doom. The pains hide well at first, a dull throb during speeches, a wince suppressed in audiences, all part of the queenly facade. You wander the palace later, overhearing courtiers complain of toothaches treated with laudanum drops, not drills, and you realize it's a shared suffering, from throne to tenement. The primitive tools fail spectacularly against the onslaught. Extractions are common, often done by barbers with pliers, leaving gaps filled by false teeth carved from ivory or, grimly, battlefield bones. Another quirky echo, the tooth key or wrench-like device for yanking molars, was a dentist's staple, twisting and pulling with brute force that makes you clench your own jaw in sympathy. You imagine Victoria enduring such a session in private, her stoic nature hiding the ordeal from public view. The debate lingers: did social taboos against discussing bodily woes exacerbate the neglect, or was it purely a tech gap? Either way, you're tasting the bitterness now, the paste's aftertaste clinging as lunch approaches. Joke 2: Victorian oral care was so basic, their smiles were the original British stiff upper lip, literally holding back the decay. You smile faintly, the ASMR lilt slowing your pulse as sensory details drift. The cool basin water, the herbal rinse's faint spice, all veiling the underlying rot. Afternoon finds you in the drawing room, where conversations flow but breaths are held short, everyone armed with fans or handkerchiefs, dusted in peppermint to deflect detection. You notice Victoria chewing on a licorice root, a natural abrasive, her subtle way of combating the dilemma without fanfare. The hidden pains surface in diaries later. Historians note her complaints of headaches that might trace back to infected gums, and treated in an age before antibiotics. Modern aside again, we'd pop an ibuprofen and floss it away, but here it's endurance over ease. You feel the neglect accumulating, enamel thinning like patience in a long rain, leading to those quiet agonies that shape a monarch's grit. As evening softens the light, you're back at the vanity for a quick evening scrub, the routine bookending the day but doing little to stem the tide. The twig frays further, the paste runs low, and you spit out the day's remnants, feeling the vulnerability in every stroke. One last joke to tuck you in: if dental neglect was a royal decree, Victoria's court would have been the kingdom of cavities. Long live the queen, short live the teeth. You exhale gently, the sarcasm fading into calm whispers. The mirror reflects a world of primitive defenses against inevitable decay, pains buried deep but ever present, flowing onward into the tangled messes yet to come. The palace hums with the soft clatter of evening, but you're drawn back to Victoria's dressing room, where the air carries a faint whiff of lavender oil, and something earthier: her hair. A royal crown in its own right, now a tangled testament to the heir's grooming struggles. You stand at her side, watching as a maid lifts a heavy silver comb, its teeth glinting in candlelight, ready to tackle the unwashed locks that framed the queen's face. Your own scalp itches at the thought, the weight of days, weeks without a proper wash settling like dust. Hair care in this time is a messy, lily affair, a far cry from your shampoo-soaked showers, and you're about to dive into the turmoil of tresses that even a queen can't escape. You watch the maid begin, gently teasing at Victoria's dark curls, each strand slick with the body's natural oils and the residue of powders meant to soak up grease. The mainstream fact is sobering. In the early Victorian era, hair washing was a rare ordeal, often done every few weeks or even monthly, as water was still suspect and the process cumbersome. You imagine the effort: buckets hauled, water heated over fires, and then the slow, cold rinse that leaves you shivering. Victoria's hair, pinned up daily in elaborate braids, traps sweat and dust from London's sooty air, turning her scalp into a silent battlefield. You run your fingers through your own imaginary locks, feeling the grittiness, and you're half tempted to beg for a modern clarifying shampoo. Here's the quirky tidbit that makes you blink. Some Victorians, possibly including Victoria in her younger years, used egg yolks or bran water, literally boiled weak mash, to clean their hair, believing it added shine while cutting grease. Picture that gooey yolk smeared into her scalp, the smell faintly breakfast-like, rinsed out with vinegar to kill the funk. You grimace as the maid applies a pomade, a waxy mix of bear fat or lard scented with herbs, to tame flyaways and add gloss. It's less about cleanliness and more about control, but it leaves her hair heavier, stickier, by day's end. Scholars debate whether this infrequent washing was purely practical, lacking hot water and time. You're tied to lingering fears that wet hair invited illness, like colds or worse. You lean closer, the comb snagging on a knot, and you feel the tug in sympathy. The maid sprinkles a dusting of rice powder to absorb oil, a trick that's more cosmetic than cleansing. Your scalp tingles with imagined grime, the kind that builds when you skip a shower for just one dino. Multiply that by weeks. Modern aside, our sulfate-free shampoos and dry sprays would be royal treasures here, cutting through grease in seconds. Instead, you're stuck with this oily ritual, the air thick with the scent of pomade and the faint sourness of unwashed roots. Joke 1. Why did Victorian hair look so sleek? Because grease was the original styling gel, free with every skipped wash. You chuckle softly, the sarcasm a soothing whisper in this sleepy tale. As the morning unfolds, you follow Victoria to a public appearance, her hair now polished up though. But you know the secret beneficial strands hidden under pins and ribbons. The palace's heat, from coal fires and heavy drapes, doesn't help. Sweat beads at her hairline, adding to the mess. You notice courtiers, their own locks equally neglected, fanning themselves to stir the air, which carries a mix of floral oils and human musk. The infrequent washing means everyone's fighting the same battle, from queen to footman. Another modern aside. You'd trade a crown jewel for a quick spritz of dry shampoo to banish that shine. The maid later brushes out the day's dust, 100 strokes as tradition demands, but it only spreads the oils, not removes them. The quirky egg yolk trick lingers in your mind as you overhear gossip about ladies rinsing with ale or milk for extra luster, fringe practices that sound more like recipes than hygiene. You imagine Victoria experimenting in her youth, her maids stifling giggles as they poured dairy over her head. The debate resurfaces. Was hair care's neglect a matter of limited science, or just the era's obsession with elaborate styles over cleanliness? Either way, you're brushing through your own imagined tresses now, the comb catching on grit, and you long for a hot shower's steam. Joke 2. Victorian hair care was so wild, their scalps were basically cooking show gouache. Anyone. You smile faintly, the ASMR cadence lulling you as the sensory details pile up, the pomade's slick residue, the powder's chalky dust, the faint itch of neglect. Evening settles, and you're back at the vanity, the maid undoing pins to let Victoria's hair fall, heavy and fragrant with the day's accumulations. The brushing resumes, a ritual as much for show as for grooming, but it does little to lift System. Clean the scalp. You feel the weight of those locks, the greasy sheen catching the candlelight, and you know tomorrow's routine will bring more of the same. One last joke to ease you into the night. If hair was wealth, Victorians were millionaires in Greece. You exhale, the gentle sarcasm fading into a whisper. As the palace grows still, the turmoil of those tresses lingers, a tangled reminder that even queens couldn't escape the air's grimy grip, carrying you forward into the next chapter of royal struggle. The candlelight flickers as you drift through Buckingham Palace's somber halls, the air now heavier, tinged with the weight of loss. It's the early 1860s, and you're trailing Victoria, no longer the sprightly queen of her youth but a widow cloaked in mourning's black veil. Prince Albert's death has cast a shadow over her reign, and with it, her personal hygiene takes a deeper plunge into neglect, as grief amplifies the year's already lax standards. You feel the oppressive fabric of her mourning weeds, the dark bombazine and crepe absorbing light and heat, trapping the dirt and sweat of her sorrow. You're immersed in this somber world, where purity physical and emotional slips further out of reach. You stand in her private chambers, the room dim despite the morning sun struggling through drawn curtains. Victoria's routine has shifted, her focus on mourning rather than maintenance. The mainstream historical fact is stark. After Albert's death in 1861, Victoria entered perpetual mourning, wearing black for the rest of her life, which historians note often exacerbated hygiene challenges due to the heavy, non-breathable fabrics and her withdrawal from public scrutiny. You watch her maids fasten the widow's cap, its stiff lace framing a face etched with grief, but beneath it, the unwashed scalp and skin tell a story of neglect. Bathing, already rare, becomes even less frequent. You sense her reluctance to engage with the world, let alone a chilly tub. The quirky tidbit creeps in like a whisper from the shadows. Some mourners, possibly Victoria herself, believed that excessive washing during grief could wash away memories of the departed, a fringe superstition that justified skipping baths for emotional reasons. You imagine her hesitating over a basin, the water untouched, as if cleanliness might erase Albert's lingering presence. Scholars debate whether this was a genuine belief or merely an excuse for depression-driven apathy, but either way you feel the grind settling deeper. Her black gown a shield that hides the accumulating dirt. You touch the heavy fabric, its texture rough and warm, already clinging to your skin with the day's first sweat. As you follow her through the palace, the air feels stagnant, mirrors draped in black to honor tradition, reflecting nothing but gloom. The mourning attire layers of wool, silk, and crepe-traps odors like a tune, and you're hyper-aware of your own imagined dampness beneath similar garb. Modern aside, our lightweight cottons and quick-dry fabrics would feel like freedom compared to this suffocating shroud. You notice Victoria moving slowly, her steps weighed down as much by fabric as by sorrow, the black absorbing every speck of dust and soot from the palace's coal fires. Joke 1. Why did Victorian widows love black? It hid the stains of grief and everything else. You let out a soft chuckle, the sarcasm a gentle nudge in the sleepy narrative. The day unfolds, and you're at her side during a rare audience, her veil a barrier between her and the world. The court subdued, but the air carries that familiar mix of perfume and musk, now intensified by her heavy attire. You fan yourself, the motion futile against the heat trapped in your own layers, and you wonder how she endures it. The maids, later, peel off the outer garments, revealing underlayers stiff with sweat and time, aired out but rarely washed. The quirky superstition lingers. Did she skip baths to cling to Albert's memory, or was it just too much effort in her haze of loss? You feel the stickiness, the itch of unwashed skin, and long for a modern shower's cleansing rush. Afternoon brings a quiet moment in the gardens, but even here, the black attire feels oppressive, the sun baking the fabric against your body. You notice Victoria's hands unwashed since morning, smudging a letter she writes, the ink blurring with faint traces of grime. The debate resurfaces. Did morning's strict dress codes worsen hygiene by design, or was Victoria's neglect a personal response to grief, unchecked by her status? Either way, you're caught in this cycle of dirt and despair. The sensory details vivid, the crepes rough scratched, the faint mildew scent from damp hands, the weight of unwashed days piling up like her sorrow. Joke 2, morning clothes were so heavy, they carried the dirt of a life demetrially. You smile faintly, the ASMR cadence slowing your breath as the palace settles into dusk. The maids return, their own hygiene no better, handling her garments with care but adding their own layer of grime to the mix. You imagine the vinegar cloths from earlier years, now rarely used, as grief overrides even those small efforts. Modern aside again, we'd toss those morning weeds in a washing machine and call it therapy. But here it's endurance. The deepened dirt is palpable, a physical echo of her emotional state, blending seamlessly into the court's next challenges. As night falls, you're back in her chambers, the air thick with the scent of wax and wool, the morning attire draped over a chair like a specter. The neglect feels heavier now, each skipped bath a nod to her loss, each layer a reminder of the year's limits. One last joke to ease the gloom. If Victoria's grief was a scent, it'd be OD unwashed royal but raw. You exhale, the sarcasm softening into whispers as the narrative winds down. The dirt of mourning lingers, a gritty testament to a queen bound by love and loss, carrying you toward the courtly facades yet to come. The palace's shadowed chambers give way to the glittering bustle of a grand court reception, where the facades of elegance hide a symphony of scents both alluring and alarming. You're swept into the throng now, brushing shoulders with lords and ladies in their finery, the air a swirling cocktail of lavender, musk, and something deeper, more primal malodors of bodies barely bathed, concealed but not conquered. Victoria, still in her mourning blacks but hosting nonetheless, stands at the center, her presence commanding despite the veil of grief. You mingle among the guests, inhaling deeply, only to regret it as the perfumes clash like overeager suitors, each trying to outdo the last in masking the underlying uncleanliness that permeates even the highest echelons of society. You press through the crowd, the heat from packed bodies rising like steam from a forgotten kettle, turning the grand hall into a hothouse of hidden horrors. Candles flicker overhead, casting warm glows on powdered faces, but they do little to dispel the sticky humidity that clings to your skin. The mainstream historical fact whispers through the chatter. In Victoria's court, as in much of 19th century Europe, personal bathing remained infrequent, with many relying on heavy perfumes and colognes to combat body odors rather than regular washing, a holdover from earlier fears of water's dangers. You catch a whiff of a duke's rose-scented coat, potent enough to make your eyes water, but beneath it lurks the sour tang of sweat-soaked linen, unchanged for days. It's a delicate dance, this concealment, where everyone pretends not to notice the collective funk. But here's the quirky tidbit that makes you stifle a grin. Some courtiers tucked orange peels studded with cloves into their pockets or hands, these pomanders acting as portable air fresheners. A fringe habit echoing medieval plague defenses but now battling ballroom body odor. Imagine Victoria herself, perhaps slipping one into her reticule during longer events, the citrus spike cutting through the haze like a secret weapon. You feel the press of a lady's gown against your arm, her perfume a cloud of jasmine so thick it's almost tangible, yet you detect the faint mustiness rising from her unwashed neck. Scholars still debate whether this over-reliance on scents was more about social signaling, proclaiming wealth through exotic imports, or a genuine necessity in an age before deodorants. But either way, you're choking on the floral fob, wondering how anyone breathes freely. As you circle the room, the sensory assault builds, the rustle of silks, the clink of glasses, the low murmur of conversations, all underscored by that persistent undercurrent of malodor. A gentleman bows low, his breath a mix of wine and neglected teeth, and you fan yourself not for the heat but for relief. Modern aside, our antiperspirants and body sprays would revolutionize these gatherings. turning them from scent wars into actual mingling. Instead, you're dodging plumes of patchouli and ambergris, each guest a walking bouquet designed to distract from the day's accumulations. Joke 1. Why did Victorian courtiers love perfume so much? It was the only way to court without the court smelling a rat. You'll let the sarcasm slip through like a soft whisper, easing the discomfort as you navigate the crowd. The evening wears on and you're near Victoria now, her black attire absorbing the light but not the odors swirling around her. She nods graciously to ambassadors, her own eau de cologne a subtle lavender veil, but in close quarters, the court's uncleanliness reveals itself, sweet from dancing, dust from carriage rides. All trapped in heavy fabrics, you inhale sharply as a wave of musk hits you from a passing countess, her scent strong enough to cover a multitude but failing at the edges. The masked maladies are everywhere, and her arms dusted with powders that cake by midnight, feet in tight shoes exuding a cheesy whiff. Even the Queen's entourage carrying faint traces of chamberpot proximity. It's a shared secret, this uncleanliness, bound by etiquette that forbids mention. You pause by a refreshment table, sipping punch that's mercifully tart, but even here, the air hangs heavy. Another modern aside, you'd kill for an air freshener plug-in or even a window cracked open. But Victorian propriety keeps everything sealed tight against noxious vapors. The quirky pomanders come to mind again. You spot a lady discreetly sniffing one, her expression one of quiet desperation amid the glamour. The debate lingers: did the court's emphasis on appearance over hygiene reflect broader societal shifts toward industrialization's grind, or was it simply inertia from pre-germ theory days? Either way, you're immersed in it, the perfumes a thin armor cracking under the strain of reality. Joke 2. Court events were like a perfume party. Everyone brought their own bottle to hide the fact no one brought sup. You chuckle inwardly, the gentle cadence lulling you as the music swells for a waltz. You watch couples twirl, their movements graceful but generating fresh waves of warmth and scent, the maladies intensifying with exertion. Victoria observes from her gaze, her fan waving slowly, perhaps stirring her own concealed odors. The uncleanliness isn't malicious. It's the norm, a product of an era where hot water is a luxury, and time for thorough cleanses even rarer amid endless duties. You feel the stickiness on your own skin now, imagined but vivid, as if the court's collective grime is contagious. Later, as the gathering thins, you're in a quieter alcove, overhearing whispers about a particularly pungent diplomat whose cologne couldn't quite cope. The masks slip a bit in these moments, revealing the human beneath the heraldry. One more joke to soften the blow. If odors were currency, Victorian courts would be richer than the Bank of England stink rich. You smile, the sarcasm fading into a sleepy hush as the night deepens. The perfumes linger in your nostrils, a floral fortress against the maladies that define this world, blending onward into the slow shifts yet to dawn. The court's lingering perfumes fade into the background hum of a new era dawning, where whispers of scientific breakthroughs begin to challenge the grimy grip of old habits. You're wandering the palace libraries now, shelves groaning undertones of emerging knowledge, as Victoria, in her later years, encounters the tentative stirrings of sanitation reform that promise to upend everything from royal baths to public health. The air feels charged, not just with the usual soot from London's chimneys, but with ID-storm theories bubbling up like steam from a long overdue kettle. You leaf through a report on your imaginary desk, feeling the crisp paper, sensing the shift as medicine moves from miasmas to microbes, slowly chipping away at the Queen's entrenched routines. You watch Victoria receive a visitor, perhaps a reform-minded physician, his voice earnest as he explains the invisible enemies lurking in water and air. The mainstream historical fact settles in like a revelation. Louis Pasteur's germ theory, popularized in the 1860s, and Joseph Lister's antiseptic techniques in surgery from 1867 onward, began influencing British hygiene, leading to gradual improvements in public sanitation like the installation of sewers in London though personal habits lag behind. You imagine her nodding politely, her black morning gown still a barrier to full embrace, but the palace sees hints more frequent hand-washing among staff, perhaps a new emphasis on boiled water for her tea. Yet, her own hygiene remains tentative, a queen caught between tradition and this slow tide of change. Here's the quirky tidbit that raises your brow. Some advocates pushed carbolic soap, laced with phenol, as a miracle cleanser, and whispers suggest Victoria tried it during outbreaks. Its sharp, medicinal scent clashing with her preferred florals like an uninvited guest at high tea. You picture her lathering up sparingly, the foam fizzing on her skin, wondering if this pungent bar could banish the horrors she's known all her life. Scholars openly debate whether these scientific shifts truly penetrated the royal bubble. Did Victoria adopt them out of genuine conviction? Or was it more a performative nod to progress while her personal purity stayed rooted in older fears? You feel the tension, the soap's sting a metaphor for the discomfort of change in an aging reign. As you trail her through a revamped palace wing, pipes groaning with newly installed plumbing, the air carries a fresher note. But it's uneven hot water still a novelty. Baths more regular but not daily. You splash your face in a basin, the water warmer now thanks to these innovations. But old habits die hard. Victoria's routines evolve slowly, her grief-shadowed life resisting full immersion. Modern aside, our antibacterial gels and UV sanitizers would seem like sorcery to her, zapping germs in seconds without the drama. Instead, you're witnessing the crawl toward cleanliness, each tentative step a battle against inertia. Joke 1. Why did germ theory take so long to catch on? Because Victorians thought microbes were just tiny British stiff upper lips too polite to cause trouble. You chuckle softly, the sarcasm a gentle ripple in this dreamy flow. The day progresses, and you're at a public health meeting Victoria attends, her presence lending weight to reforms like the Public Health Act of 1875, which tackled urban filth but trickled down slowly to personal levels. You hear discussions of cholera outbreaks, the tense stench finally prompting action, and you realize her empire's hygiene is shifting, even if her own mirror reflects caution. The challenging of habits feels palpable. Maids now scrub with carbolic, their hands raw but runes smelling of progress, rather than pomanders. You notice Victoria's own change, perhaps more linen changes, a dip in the tub twice monthly now, but it's hesitant, like testing cold water with a toe. The quirky carbolic craze echoes in the servants' quarters, where they joke about it burning away sins along with dirt. Afternoon finds you in the royal apartments, where a new porcelain tub gleams, a symbol of the year's pivot. You imagine Victoria soaking longer, the steam rising with thoughts of Albert, who might have championed these ideas had he lived. The debate lingers. Did science's push come from top-down royal endorsement or grassroots pressure from epidemics, with Victoria more observer than pioneer? Either way, you're soaking in the shift, the water's warmth and novelty that hints at horrors receding. Modern aside again, we'd blast those germs with pressure washers, but here it's a slow simmer toward sanitation. Joke 2. Sanitation reforms were so gradual, even the germs got bored waiting for their eviction notice. You smile faintly, the ASMR whispers lulling you as sensory details swirl. The soap's acrid bite, the pipe's distant rumble, the faint hope in the air. Evening draws near and you're reflecting on these changes from a palace balcony, the London skyline less hazy with new sewers below. Victoria retires, her habits challenged but not transformed overnight. Infrequent washes persist, perfumes still mask what science hasn't fully banished. The tentative nature of it all feels like a tease, progress knocking but not bursting through the door. One more joke to tuck away. If germ theory was a royal decree, Victoria might have said, "We are not amused yet." You exhale, the sarcasm softening into calm as the narrative drifts. The slow shift lingers, a bridge between old grime and new gleam, carrying you toward the legacy that echoes still. The palace's evolving gleam dims into twilight as you find yourself at the twilight of Victoria's reign. the year 1901 whispering through the corridors like a final sigh. You're by her bedside now, the air heavy with the scent of laudanum and aged linens, reflecting on a life that spanned from grimy beginnings to tentative cleanups, yet left a legacy of lingering filth that horrifies even as it fascinates. Her empire has sprawled across the globe, but beneath the pomp, the hygiene horrors persist, echoing in ways that make you ponder how much has truly changed or hasn't in the modern world you know. You gaze at her frail form, the black morning gown still draped nearby, the symbol of the dirt that clung through decades, and you feel the weight of it all settling like dust on forgotten relics. You trace back through her reign's end, the mainstream fact anchoring your thoughts. By the late 1890s, Victoria's health declined amid widespread public health reforms, but her personal hygiene remained conservative, with infrequent bathing contributing to skin irritations and infections common in the elderly of her time. As noted in medical records from Balmoral and Windsor, you imagine her final days, servants tending with more vigor now, thanks to those germ theories trickling in, but the habits of a lifetime die hard, baths still sporadic, layers of clothing trapping the remnants of an era's neglect. The filth lingers in subtle ways, faint odors in her chambers, the stiffness of unwashed fabrics, a queen whose body bears the scars of sparse purity, from dental woes to the itch of unclean skin. But oh, the quirky tidbit that lingers like a peculiar aftertaste. In her later years, Victoria reportedly favored monkey glands or other exotic tonics peddled as youth restores, some involving animal extracts thought to purify the blood, a fringe pseudoscience that blurred the line between hygiene and quackery. Picture her sipping such a brew, the flavor odd and gamey, believing it might cleanse from within what external washes couldn't touch. You chuckle inwardly at the Magia queen turning to monkey magic. One soap might have sufficed. Scholars debate whether this embrace of odd remedies reflected desperation in her declining health, or a broader Victorian fascination with exotic cures over proven sanitation. But either way, you're pondering the horrifying persistence of such ideas, even as science advanced. As you sit in the quiet room, the sensory details envelop you, the creak of floorboards under nurses' feet, the faint camphor scent from medicinal rubs masking deeper malodors, the cool touch of starch sheets that hide stains from infrequent changes. Modern aside, we'd wheel in a hospital-grade sanitizer station and call it a day. But here it's all about enduring the echoes of filth that defined her rule. You reflect on how her legacy seeps into today's horrifying realization that some hygiene myths, like avoiding overwashing, still pop up in wellness trends, a direct thread from her time to ours. Joke 1. Why does Victoria's hygiene legacy horrify us? Because it's the original dirty secret that keeps on giving like bad breath at a family reunion. You'll let the sarcasm drift softly, a gentle tease in this reflective haze. The reigns and unfolds in your mind, her diamond jubilee in 1897, a glittering facade over underlying grime, crowds cheering a queen whose personal purity lagged behind her empire's progress. You wander imagined streets, the London fog less choking now with better sewers, but personal habits still echoing the old ways in many homes. You feel the pull of those horrors in modern parallels. Think of rushed mornings without showers, or the grime of public transport, reminders that we're not so far removed. The lingering filth manifests in subtle horrors, antibiotic resistance tracing back to unchecked infections in her era, or beauty standards that echo her layered concealments. You ponder it all, the censor weight of history pressing down like a heavy quilt. Afternoon light fades, and you're back at her side, the quirky monkey tonics a footnote in the grand narrative of neglect. Did they help, or just add to the eccentricity of her final chapter? The debate swirls, personal choice or cultural constraint, as you sense the echoes rippling outward. Modern aside again, our apps track hygiene habits now, beeping reminders Victoria could only dream of, turning filth into forgotten folklore. But the horrors persist in forgotten corners, developing worlds mirroring her era's struggles, or even our own lapses during pandemics. Joke 2. Victoria's legacy is like that one sock you can't find, filthy, forgotten, but it turns up when you least expect it. You smile sleepily, the ASMR whispers carrying you through the reflection. As night deepens, the palace grows still, her breathing shallow, the filth's legacy a quiet horror that outlives her. You ponder the modern ties, fast fashion echoing her stained layers, or beauty hacks that mask rather than clean, horrifying threads woven into today. The end feels poignant, a queen whose reign bookended by dirt leaves us questioning our own purity. One last joke to lighten the legacy. If filth was her crown jewel, we'd all be royals in a messy world. Long live the grind. You exhale, the sarcasm softening as the narrative closes, the echoes fading into the calm of what comes next. And now, as the palace lights dim and Victoria's story settles into the gentle hush of history, let yourself drift, dear listener, into the soft embrace of night. You've wandered through her world of hidden grime and scented veils, feeling the weight of those layers, the itch of unwashed days, but here in this quiet moment, release it all like a slow, steady breath. Imagine the fog lifting from London's streets, the Thames running clearer, your own skin fresh and unburdened under cool sheets. No more echoes of filth to chase your dreams, just the reassuring whisper that time has washed away the worst, leaving lessons wrapped in stardust. Feel your eyelids growing heavier, sentences lengthening like shadows at dusk, carrying you toward restful shores where queens and commoners alike find peace in the purity of sleep. The horrors fade, dissolving into misty memories, and you, cozy and calm, surrender to the night's tender lullaby. Sweet dreams await, my friend, in a world made softer by the stories we've shared.